they want. They should want the same thing. If it allows me to read, okay. So the price in dollars per unit, consumers, yes. Producers, find the equilibrium point, the consumer surplus at the equilibrium point, and the producer surplus at the equilibrium point. Perfect. Good. Without finding the equilibrium point, I cannot proceed. How do I find the equilibrium point? And it has to be a point. X and Y. Anyone? How do I find this?
Set dx equal to sx.
Dx, d of x equals s of x. 5 minus x equals the square root of x plus 7. What do we do next?
We have to put both sides to the square, to the
I can't
power of
because
2. So
yes, awesome. We square both sides. Perfect. The right-hand side and the left-hand side. Excellent. Thank you. How do we do this? Can anyone give us the left-hand side and somebody else the right-hand side?
Negative x squared minus 10x plus 25.
So you mean 25 minus 10x plus x squared. Good. When we square negative x, we always get x squared. So only the middle term can have a negative sign. The first and the last will never have negative. Good. Perfect. What about the right-hand side?
x plus 7.
That's it. So now we have everything has to go to one side. So this is x squared minus 11x and plus what? Plus 18. Can we factor this? If we cannot factor, then we have to use the calculator or the quadratic.
It's just 9 and 2.
X minus 2, x minus 9. So we have x equals 2 and x equals 9. But look what we are given here. So then which one?
X equals 2.
This is the only one. So then the equilibrium point has 2 for x. So number of units 2. What about the price per unit?
Well, why is only the x equals 2 the answer and not the 9? Okay,
Is that okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Sure. So can anyone give us the y coordinate of the equilibrium point?
3.
You said 3? 5 minus 2?
Yes.
Yes. Perfect. Good. So we found the equilibrium point. And now we want to continue. Consumer surplus. Oops. Consumer surplus. And number 3, producer surplus. How do we determine that?
For the first one, it's going to be integral from 0 to 2.
Exactly. 0 to 2. From 5 minus x dx, but minus, I can never forget minus.
6.
Yes, 2 times 3 base times height. Good. What about the producer surplus? And then we can calculate both.
It's going to be 6 minus integral of 0 to 2, and then
From the other one, from the square root of x plus 7 dx. Awesome. Once you understand this, now we only calculate the integrals that we learned in the previous chapter. Good. So let's start with the first one. So for the consumer surplus, this is simple, right? So this is 5x minus x squared over 2 from 0 to 2 minus 6. So when I plug in 2, because when I plug in 0, I'll have 0. So I have 10 minus 4 over 2, which is 2, and minus 6. So 10 minus 8 is $2. So when we purchase 2 units at the price of $3 per unit, we get an extra $2. Okay? Well, the price should be a little bit higher, but we are enjoying this. The price is a little bit lower, and we are getting an extra of $2. Theoretically, not really in our pocket, right? But the fact that we're not paying it, that's a good thing for us. Good. So now we want to determine the producer surplus, which is 6 minus the integral from 0 to 2 from the square root of x plus 7 dx. Now a substitution is, I wouldn't say required, because we can go around it, but I think it's the best thing to do. What substitution would you use?
U equals x plus 7.
Exactly. We need du because we cannot continue without du.
Dx.
Exactly. This prime times dx. This prime is 1 times dx. Awesome. Limits of integration now, please. What is the lower limit for u? By plugging in the lower limit for x.
7.
That's it. Awesome. Upper limit for u when we plug in the upper limit for when we plug in the upper limit for x.
It's 9.
9. Very good. Awesome. It is 9. And this is dx. It will be du, but what do I replace this piece by?
Would it be u to the negative 1/2?
It's positive because it's in the numerator.
Oh, okay.
Very good. Awesome. So this is 6 minus u to 3/2 over 3/2 from 7 to 9. 6 minus, I have to flip the denominator. I plug in 9. The square root of 9 is 2. 3 to the third is 27 minus. The square root of 7 is the square root of 7. So 7, the square root of 7. And I need to approximate this. So since this is, I want you to see how I do this. The other ones were all just too simple. So 6 minus. 6 minus. Please don't forget parentheses for 2/3. Okay, and then we have 27 and minus 7, the square root of 7. Now, if you want to check from the get-go, we can. So we do this and number 9, and it goes from 0 to 2. Careful how you enter the function is the square root of x plus 7. Don't forget the x. And when we click enter, I have to get this gibberish, right? 0.3468, blah, blah, blah. So 35 cents. Let's see. Yes, 35 cents. So the consumer surplus is 0.35. Any questions on the consumer surplus and producer surplus?
How do you know when you need to approximate?
I always have to approximate because it's a very good question. So, for example, if we are asked to determine, normally, it's a perfect question. Normally, we want exact answers, always. But when it comes to money, I'm not going to tell you that I have in my pocket 6 minus 2/3 quantity, 27 minus 7, the square root of 7. So I'm going to say I have 35 cents in my pocket, right? So especially when it comes to money, we have to approximate. Normally, we prefer all exact answers. But I don't want to make you calculate anything. So I have to calculate and say, look, I'm looking at my wallet, I only have 35 cents, not 6 minus 2/3 quantity, 27 minus 7, the square root of 7. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Good.
Excuse me, Professor?
Yes?
Could you explain the last part? I had to go walk out of the room for a second
Yes.
of the problem.
Ye-
Once you got past the part where 6 minus u to the 1/2 du.
Yes, so I have the 6. I have to flip the 3 halves, 2/3 in front. And then when I plug in 9, first I take the square root because it's 1/2. The square root of 9 is 3, but when I raise it to the 3rd power, I get 27. And then when I plug in 7, I have the square root of 7 3 times. So the square root of 7 times the square root of 7 is 7, and I also have another square root of 7. And then we plugged in all this in the calculator, and we got roughly 35 cents. Is that okay?
Yes.
Are we okay with consumer surplus and producer surplus? Do you think
Yes.
do you think we need another example? Once you understood, so let me stop this for a second. Once you understood how they are calculated, with the area on top of the rectangle or the area inside the rectangle, you will never forget how it's calculated, right? From the entire area, I subtract the rectangle, or from the rectangle, I subtract the area below to get that little piece. And that was possible because of chapter 4. Because in chapter 4, that's all we discussed, how to find areas. And this is the first application of integration. And there is another one, which is 5.7. Any questions? I know I have 2 minutes left. What would you like to do? I may be able to give you your time, right? One time, or maybe I think this is a